The living room. The living room is the place we come and we discuss everything, the issues of life. And that's one of the things we're going to be doing today. We're talking about how stress affects us physically. And we know that in 2021, there are so many stressors in life and triggers that trigger those stresses. We know that you have relationships, stress from relationships, stress from loss, whether it's the loss of finances, the loss of a loved one, the loss of a job. We know stress comes from illness. There's a lot of stress that comes from just being ill. We know stress comes from arguments. Stress comes from the workplace and people in the workplace. Stress, a lot of stress comes from uncertainty in life. Stress, we deal with stress as it pertains to changes in life, traffic, and transitions in life. And so there's so many different areas that people today are dealing with stress, and these things are affecting us on the inside. Now, even before we get to my special guest tonight, who is my son, Chris Singleton, let me just say, first of all stress is not bad. And I think we touched on that maybe last week. Stress is really good. Okay, some stress is good. But as our guest told us last week, it's chronic stress. It's continuing stress. So that's one thing I wanted to just mention. Second thing is, we're today not going to just talk about the problem. He's also going to give us some solutions. And finally, because I am not a medical doctor, and even though Christopher probably knows as much as a medical doctor, he's not a doctor. So we always want to give a disclaimer. We are not here to treat or to cure or to diagnose or to prevent any disease. I always recommend that you talk to your health provider, your doctor, when you're about to start any new regimen. Chris has done his research. I've done a minuscule amount of research, and we encourage you to do your own research also. So, once again, our special guest for How Stress Affects You Physically Part 2 is my guest, my second son, Christopher Singleton. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. So what are we talking about tonight?
We're going to briefly recap last week. From there, we're going to talk about what I think is important to avoid. After we go over that, we're going to talk about what to actually do. There's several herbs, vitamins, nutrients that we can be taking on a daily basis, some on a weekly basis, to really give us the best chances in this toxic world to achieve optimal health. So talking about last week, just a brief overview of what we talked about last week. I showed the video to a couple of people. And one thing I want to emphasize is that I'm going to talk about certain things as kind of a marker. You use this marker to do your own research. Shouldn't take long, but it's almost like if somebody says, hey, I want to study law. Okay, well, you can start by studying pre-law as opposed to studying biology. So in this particular case, what we're saying is, hey, look, these are certain recommendations that I know that have worked for me, worked for a lot of people that I've been in close contact with. Use it as a marker to kind of move forward. That is the reason, really, I don't want to go into too much detail in terms of technicalities, all right? So now, last week we talked about, brief overview, we talked about stress. We talked about how adrenal fatigue can result in stress. That is, when you're in a chronic stressful situation, your adrenal glands are programmed to produce adrenaline and cortisol. If you live consistently in that stressful state, what's going to happen is your adrenal glands run the risk of becoming fatigued. If they become fatigued, then what's going to happen is they're no longer going to produce sufficient amounts of cortisol. Remember, cortisol is not bad. Cortisol is actually going to help a person regulate many bodily functions, including blood sugar. If your adrenal glands are fatigued, and you can no longer produce adequate amounts of cortisol, then what's going to happen is type 2 diabetes is a real threat. Aside from that, the chronic inflammation that can result from stress can lead to a plethora of different diagnoses that a medical doctor could potentially give you, and may or may not link that to the underlying root cause, which is the adrenal fatigue, which is caused by the stress. They're just going to say, hey, you have type 2 diabetes, you need to take this insulin. Well, that may or may not be something that could have been avoided, potentially. We talked about ashwagandha. That is the different supplements that can be taken in order to help your body recover or simply avoid this adrenal fatigue state that many people live in, and they don't really even know they're living in it. The body is incredibly resilient. It has the ability to protect itself, regenerate itself, especially the liver. And in that, given those circumstances, what happens is when a person suffers from this adrenal fatigue, they are able to recover as long as they're able to intermittently avoid the stress. But then they're still living in a chronic state of stress, chronic state of suboptimal health. So we talked about ashwagandha. We talked about vitamin D. We talked about turmeric. These three things alone can have a dramatic impact on a person's health. We also talked about, which I'm going to go into more detail today, what to actually avoid. One of the biggest things that I personally believe is a detriment to health is sugar. Sugar, if I had to choose one thing alone that I'm going to avoid at all cost, it's going to be sugar. Sometimes people wind up in different events, birthday parties and so forth, and they might slip a piece of cake. Hey, anything's okay in moderation. Me personally, knowing the negative effects of sugar, I'm just not going to go there. My body no longer craves it. My body really never craved it. Nobody's body really ever craves it. But let's say my taste buds are no longer fooled into thinking that's what they want. It's really too sweet. Sugar, interesting stat about sugar. High blood sugar raises a person's perceived age. There was a study that I believe they studied 53,000 people. And what they discovered was for every milliliter per liter raise of blood sugar raised, that person's perceived age was 5 months higher. Okay? That is to say, the higher the blood sugar, according to studies, the older a person is going to look. So the four things I'm going to recommend, and I give special emphasis to sugar, but the four things I'm going to recommend, or let me say that I'm going to say me with my personal life I avoid, are sugar. I avoid gluten. I avoid GMO, and I avoid dairy. Now, the reason I'm going to pick on those four things is because the body can deal with a lot, especially in moderation. But the short-term effects, this is aside from the long-term effects, the short-term effects of these four things I just now mentioned can be so detrimental that I just avoid them at all cost. So starting with sugar, we talked about the perceived increase in perceived age of a person that consumes sugar. Sugar can fool your brain into thinking you're not hungry anymore, or excuse me, to thinking you're still hungry. That is to say that when you eat sugar, the fructose in the sugar, it actually blocks the mechanism in the body that actually signals the brain that you're done eating. You don't need anymore. Well, when the sugar blocks that, you keep on eating. As you keep on eating, well, we know what that can lead to. Increase in calories, especially if a person's not exercising. It can lead to, I'm not going to go into the details of it, but you can look this up, something known as metabolic syndrome. All right, it's a very important reaction that the body has towards excess sugar that leads similar to what I talked about last week with adrenal fatigue. It leads to a plethora of diagnoses that actually harm the body in ways that that are symbolic of what society overall is going through, especially in the American population. Quick side note, having traveled around the world, there's certain countries I've gone to, and there's very few fat people. And you look at the diet, you look at what they do eat, what they don't eat. If you look at the 4 things I just now mentioned, those 4 things are large in part absent. Sometimes because they can't afford it, that's fine, you know. But in other cases, it's actually more natural, especially when we talk about the dairy aspect. The sugar itself is not really consumed in high amounts. And this is aside from high fructose corn syrup, which is different from sugar. Right? It's actually our bodies don't even know what to do with it. We've only been consuming it as a species for the last few decades, and it's horrible for you. If I had to choose between sugar and high fructose corn syrup, I'm gonna eat sugar. You'll look at studies from the corn industry, and they'll try to tell you that there's no difference between high fructose corn syrup and sugar. You can look that up yourself. Me personally, I think that's ridiculous, and people from the sugar industry, they also think it's ridiculous because it is ridiculous. But anyways, getting back to the 4 things. So sugar, GMO, genetically modified organisms, genetically modified foods.
Are you getting ready to leave sugar and go to?
Well, I'm going to talk about the 4, and then I'm going to go into more
Because
detail.
I'll say something about the
each 4 of them.
sugar when you get back up there.
Okay, well,
No.
go on and say it.
Well,
Let's talk.
I've been looking at some sugar. I had some notes on sugar that I was going to actually share about 3-4 weeks ago on the living room, and we ran out of time. But I'm looking at a couple of things. You're talking about stress, and this is saying that sugar actually causes stress, because when you eat a chocolate bar, it's saying your blood sugar spikes quickly and then plummets, causing the body to discharge a series of stress hormones, adrenaline, epinephrine, and cortisol, which then trigger your fight or flight. And that's really interesting because this is what you've been talking about. But it also talked about how sugar causes wrinkles, which you just talked about, because it reduces the elasticity in the skin. Wow. So I said it on the kindergarten level. You're way up here. But so ladies, you know what? Now my birthday is coming up on Tuesday. Now I'm not like Chris. On Tuesday, actually on Sunday and Tuesday, I will eat a piece of cake. I will not overdo it. But then I might not eat any more sweets for 6-7 months. Okay.
So that's interesting. You mentioned the kindergarten level. I'm going to say that there's no such thing, in my opinion. That is to say that you can take a microbiologist and you can sit him on this stage and he can start talking about things I have no idea about. And you can probably take somebody that's his superior and they can maybe talk about things that can leave them. I would say that in this level, for the common layman, we don't need to make it that complicated. We simply need to take the basics of the facts and apply them to our life. It's the discipline. I once had a psychologist tell me that sugar and smoking are the 2 most addicting things on this planet.
Yeah.
We also know that in studies, they found that when a person eats sugar, it excites the same portion of the brain that is excited by cocaine. All right, it's a real addiction. All right, there's actually a good book called Licking the Sugar Habit that I could recommend to people. Take a read, and you'll see actually in detail everything I'm talking about, plus probably times 100, times 1,000, because they're actually going to get into detail. A lot of people don't want to read this book because when you read it, it's almost like it gives you no choice but to say, you know what, I don't care, I'm still going to eat this sugar, I know it's doing me bad, or I'm not going to eat this sugar. But there's not going to be any gray area where is sugar good or is sugar bad. Speaking about what you just now said about the hormonal reaction, well, absolutely. Now imagine walking and you stub your toe. What happens after about a few minutes? It's going to swell, right?
Right.
That is the body's natural reaction to that type of stress or stressful situation. It's inflammation. Well, when you look at chronic inflammation systemically within the body, what you'll see is that is an epidemic right now in the United States, and for the reasons you just now mentioned about overconsumption of sugar and things that are bad. Gluten as well. We're going to talk about that in a minute, right?
Yeah, 'cause I wanna ask you
why
about
it is that gluten also contributes to this. But anyways, so now you're living in this chronic state of stress systemically. And what's the body going to do? Well, you just now mentioned what the body releases, okay? Now, I only talk about the adrenaline and the cortisol, mainly not even the adrenaline, the cortisol, because those are the two that people are more familiar with, first adrenaline, then cortisol. But cortisol, once again, it's going to be released into the body. Your adrenal glands are going to overproduce it. They're going to weaken over time, just like any function of the body would. Imagine losing your voice because you kept on yelling, right? It's the same thing with your adrenal glands. Imagine, your adrenal glands, they continually produce this cortisol. Well, now they can no longer produce it. Now your sugar levels are like this because your body has no way to regulate its own sugar functions. So anyways, so that's interesting that you read that. Also, the aging aspect of it. Yes, sugar, these are studies. And once again, look this up. Look up studies. Go to Google, sugar and aging. And you'll see that sugar actually makes you age. So when you are at a company event or just going to work in the morning and somebody walks in with the donuts, aside from the caffeine that we're not going to get into because, some
we talked about that last week a little bit.
Some people are just, they're set on their caffeine. Great, drink your caffeine. All right. But in terms of the sugar, just know that studies have also shown that women, I believe there were 83,000 women in this study, women that drink one sugary drink per day, there was 50,000, have an 83% chance more of developing type 2 diabetes than women that didn't. Now, this was a pro-female study that was looking at several functions of the female body, and that's why, we're talking about women, but men are not that different either. So, sugary drinks, our body is not designed to consume unfiltered sugar in that sense, in a sugary drink that goes directly into our body, bypasses a lot of the digestion process, goes to the portal vein, and is distributed throughout the body. And our body now is charged with this task of lowering our blood sugar because we artificially raised it. All right, it's something that you just have to really think about it. For those few seconds of stimulation that you think that you get by drinking this sugary drink, is it worth it? So anyways.
And you know what? On those sugary drinks, I just looked this up, that a can of soft drink has 39 grams of sugar.
Yeah. Here's something interesting. A lot of people say, okay, I'm not going to drink soda. Okay, next time you grab that Gatorade or Powerade or whatever it is you're going to drink, turn around the bottle, look at the ingredients, and tell me if the second ingredient is not sugar or high fructose corn syrup or fructose or some or other variation of the word sugar, which pretty much it is. And then you ask yourself, what really are you consuming? Just because it might have, pretty much remnants of some vitamin that they, infuse in very small amounts, and they can list it on the label. Is it really good for you? All right. Me personally, I drink water. That's my drink of choice. I feel good. I drink alkaline water, and I feel really good. I don't even drink water with my meals. I won't go into that, but that's something else you can also look into.
Yeah,
is it
we
healthy
actually need to talk about that one
to
day. Maybe
drink
not today, yeah.
liquid with your meals? Okay, I do not. Anyways, so getting back to the four things. So we're talking about sugar. Moving on from sugar, and we'll go back. We're gonna revisit, but moving on from sugar. The 800-pound gorilla in the room, gluten.
Yeah.
I've been places and I've been eating. Maybe got invited to dinner, maybe at a restaurant, and they serve the traditional bread. And when I say I don't eat bread, it's almost like I just now did something that's sacrilegious. Like what? I don't eat bread. Well, why don't you eat bread? Well, because I don't eat gluten. What is gluten? Well, anything with wheat, oats that contain gluten, because now sometimes there's gluten-free oats, barley. Those things are they contain gluten. Well, the gluten protein molecule is what is in gluten, and it's very difficult for the human body to digest. Not only that, if you look up Dr. Gundry, He's a Yale
Yeah.
doctor.
Yeah.
And what he said was he was treating people with heart disease, diabetes, and so forth. And one day, he's a brilliant mind, he decided to try something different. And what he did was he studied the connection between the gut and the other primary bodily organs and the effect it's going to have. When he got his clients off of gluten, what he noticed was a lot of these conditions, they dissipated and eventually disappeared. Well, he came to the conclusion that what happens is the gluten, it goes into your gut, all right? It starts to irritate the gut because you have these little, call them little trees, they're called villi and microvilli that are designed to interact with the food and extract the nutrients and vitamins from your food, okay? What happens is the gluten protein molecule, it kind of levels them off. Imagine a forest and you're cutting the entire forest, or a haircut, all right? And you get all the way down to the root level, and now all of a sudden there's nothing there to not only absorb the vitamins and nutrients, but to also protect the gut. And this gluten keeps on rubbing on the gut, and what happens is it starts to permeate the gut. It's called intestinal permeability. Now you're eating this food, and the gut is permeated. So now what happens is, in small amounts, the food starts to escape.
Little holes.
Exactly.
Permeate little holes.
It starts to escape. Now it's in your bloodstream, all right? Well, now you have these foreign molecules in your bloodstream, and what he discovered was this circulating through your body had a negative effect on everything from the liver to the heart, all right? It put a tremendous amount of stress. Now, we already talked about stress, all right? Tremendous amount of stress on the body. And what this stress did was it was disguised as different types of conditions. But these people never got better because they never dealt with the root cause. Now, in dealing with the root cause, what he did in many cases was, of course, he would employ a number of herbs that are designed to heal the gut, licorice, several herbs. But what would happen is when he cut out gluten, when he told his clients, his patients, cut out gluten, and they actually did it, he noticed that they improved dramatically. There's a really good book called Going Against the Grains, and it will tell you about the history of gluten. One of the things that really caught my eye was the gluten we consume today is not the same as the gluten they consumed 2,000 years ago. Why is that? Well, when you're talking about wheat, the lighter the plant, the higher the gluten concentration is, okay? So if you're a farmer and you want to kind of sort out the darker plants and kind of substitute the lighter plants, you can kind of engineer, so to speak, modify the actual gluten content by selecting the gluten that has the plants that have the highest concentration of gluten. What they did was they've been doing that for centuries. The gluten we eat now is much more potent than the gluten they ate 2,000 years ago. Well, this gluten, I've had people literally tell me, I stopped eating gluten for 60 days, like you said, because I would tell people, stop eating gluten for 2 months and then eat a bunch of it. If you have no reaction, cool, keep on eating it. But if you do, then stop. So I've had people tell me, man, I can't believe how clear my thinking is, how I don't have that occasional headache that makes you take these painkillers that are clogging your liver, or I don't have the chronic fatigue that I used to have. I have energy to work out and so forth. It's simply because they cut out gluten, and these are people usually, if they're going to cut out gluten, they probably already cut out sugar as well. So you'll have these people with these testimonials about cutting out gluten, and you come to the conclusion that gluten in and of itself is something that is not good for the human body.
Wow. Okay, so a couple of things happened. For years I have not eaten bread. And then maybe about 4 or 5 months ago, I discovered, I won't say this sandwich, but I discovered this sandwich at Panera. And I started eating on a regular basis. So the first thing that happened is I noticed after a while I was getting a roll around my middle. And I'm like, I've never had that in all these years. So I stopped eating bread about 2-3 weeks ago. Sunday, because, the power of suggestion, okay, LaShawn was telling me about this great carrot cake that they had at this restaurant. I can't remember the name of it. So I had gone and gotten this carrot cake and brought it home because, Dad loves carrot cake. And I got a different kind of cake. So I was eating cake on Sunday, which Sunday's my day off, that. The day off that I eat whatever I want. And Monday, I was just so sluggish. I felt like, I told you this on the phone, I felt like I was coming down with something. I probably went through a whole box of Kleenex. And so I started doing my oil of oregano. I did that like every couple of hours. And if you take oil of oregano, my son has already told me, you got to put it in some water, put it under your tongue. Don't put it in just straight. It'll burn you. Anyhow, then by Monday, I was feeling better. And by Tuesday, I was just totally back together. But I've noticed that every time now I'm eating not just sweets, but regular bread, I'm just getting this reaction. But at the same time, when I go overseas, because I've been overseas a number of years, I don't get the same reaction eating bread over there that I get here, or any of that stuff over there that I get here. So anyhow, I just kind of wanted to throw that out.
Well, it's one of the biggest misconceptions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Whenever I eat now, pretty much any processed food, if man got to it, I'm going to have a box of Kleenex. That's why I've had to start eating so pure for the most part, Monday through Saturday. I try not to eat anything that man even touched. And is that gluten because of...
Well, okay, so two things. One of the biggest misconceptions is people think that if you're not a celiac, then you can tolerate gluten. Well, the reality is only about 3% of the 30 to 40% of people, and that's a very, very conservative estimate, of people that have the genetic marker to be a celiac actually are diagnosed with celiac. Okay, that's number one. Number two, when you look at gluten tolerance, there have been studies that going by different regions that have said that regionally, the only people that are able to digest gluten and even this is on a very small level, are people from the Middle East or people from Eastern Europe. All right. Now, of course, there's a lot of variation there between the different countries and so forth. That to say that there are certain things, we can just call a spade a spade. There are certain things that affect people differently. All right. Black people, Latin people, Asian people. The chances that you can digest gluten comfortably and you can also digest lactose, comfortably, are very low. Now, once again, that doesn't mean that you're going to have a dramatic reaction like you would have a celiac. Once again, a celiac, if they eat gluten, they can wind up with anaphylactic shock in the hospital. That's an extreme. But what in life is determined based on one extreme or another? What in life does not have a middle gray area? Everything does, all right? And gluten is no different. So pretty much amylase trypsin inhibitors are what, if it's not going to be the gluten itself within the wheat, amylase trypsin inhibitors within the wheat, okay, they are responsible for the people that are not going to have a severe reaction for the gluten for causing the intestinal permeability. What you can do, there's a way to find this out though. Me personally, I had a very advanced laboratory run a test on me, and I've done this twice actually. To make sure it wasn't, and I actually had 2 different labs to see if I had a gluten sensitivity. And they both came back that yes, you do have a gluten sensitivity. Now, once again, I think most people, in this region have it, but, I actually did that for 2 reasons. Number one, because I wanted to prove it to myself, even though I've already proved this. There's a free way to do it. Like I said, don't eat gluten for 60 days and then eat a bunch of bread and see how you feel. But, also, if I go eat somewhere and I say, hey, I can't eat that because I'm gluten intolerant, well, I'm not lying, I've proven it, that I'm gluten intolerant. In terms of the processed food, well, we know that which is natural is going to be much more easily assimilated to the body. When you process food, what you're doing is you're taking it from its natural state, which tends to be single-celled, or You're making it multi-celled. You're making it. Let's see. Take a piece of fruit. Eat fruit. Eat an apple. All right. Eating that apple, you're going to be digesting the single-celled fructose. All right. Now, if you take that same apple and you squeeze out, the juice and so forth, you mix it and you make it into an apple fritter or whatever, what's going to happen is now you're going to have what's called polysaccharides. All right. Monosaccharides are what you want. That's what you're going to get from fruit. That's going to be easy to digest. Your body doesn't really have time for it to rot inside of you. All right. But when you get into these complex carbohydrates,
Okay.
all right, polysaccharides, what's going to happen is now it's going to get in your body, and your body has to employ so much more energy, so much more of the three things that you're going to use to digest. I am going to make a quick comment about why it is that I don't drink liquid with my food.
I think that's a good thing to say
Okay,
that. Real quick.
now when you digest, there's three things that you're going to use to digest food, okay? You're going to use bile, green
Right.
liquid from your liver. It's going to come from your liver, squeeze into your gallbladder. When you eat protein or fat, your gallbladder is going to contract and it's going to empty the contents into your stomach, and it's going to help you digest protein and fat. You're going to use digestive enzymes. Those are going to come from your pancreas, all right? And finally, you're going to use hydrochloric acid, and that's going to be produced by your stomach. Now, if you're going to dilute that,
Right.
it should only be with a little bit of water. Imagine diluting that with sugar, what we just now talked about. Imagine diluting that with high fructose corn syrup or alcohol even. And what happens is a lot of people do this and they don't realize why it is they feel bloated, why it is that their body, they're not giving themselves the optimal chance to digest their food because now your digestive process is that much more weak. And it's going to get into your small intestines, which the food should already be digested, but it's not now. All right? It's not fully digested. Now it's in your small intestines. Now it's rotting. Now people have chronic gas or belching and so forth, and they don't realize why. It gets down to their colon, and it's still not digested, and that's where it can ferment. You can get all kinds of bacteria. You can get parasites and so forth, a perfect breeding ground. And then people wonder, why is it that my digestion is not optimal? Why is it that I'm storing this fat? Well, because once again, your body, you're eating these meals, these solid meals, every few hours. Your body doesn't have time, so it's going to have to store it somewhere until it can get to it. So it stores it as fat, starting with the hump, so to speak, between the belly fat. That's where it starts usually, and then from there it distributes throughout the body. And people are wondering, well, why is it that I can't digest my food? Well, they usually don't complain about that, but why is it I'm getting fat? Why is it I can sniff something, I gain weight? Well, it's not that you sniff something, you gain weight. Right? What it is you're not giving your body the chance to digest what it is that you're eating. I think it was in 2004 that I read this. And then I read, a couple of doctors, prominent doctors said, hey, look, if you want the optimal digestion, don't drink liquid with your meals. Now I'm at a point, I don't even get thirsty. And this has been for years. I don't even get thirsty. If I drink liquid with my food, I feel bloated. I feel bad. I feel like sluggish and so forth. It's just nasty, So if you try it and you actually condition your body to doing that, you're going to get used to it. And once you get used to it, you'll realize the reason people want to drink so much liquid with their food is because A, they're dehydrated, and your body does need liquid to digest, or they're not properly chewing their food, and they're drinking water or liquid to wash down their food.
There's a third reason, too, but I'll say that in a minute. Go ahead.
If you're properly hydrated and you are properly chewing your food and you're eating correct proportions, you shouldn't have any reason for your body to crave liquid while you're eating.
I think a part of this is just habit. I remember when Gina and I went up to Canada to the health camp up there, and they were telling us don't drink 30 minutes before the meal. And that's pretty much, we were up there for the 2 weeks, and we were all raw food, nothing cooked, and 30 minutes before the meal, and they were basically saying that when well, first of all, we weren't drinking any sugar, but in a restaurant, you go to the restaurant, and they're bringing you soda. You know, the average, it's soda before the meal, wine with the meal, coffee after the meal. So all of the bile that you talked about, the liver making, and the enzymes that the pancreas is making, and the
Hydrochloric acid.
Hydrochloric acid, that's all getting diluted, and so it's not doing what it's intended to do. And so, but when I got back and I was telling this to people think you're being a fanatic. And so then you just have to be at the place where you just don't do it, but you can't tell people why, because they think you're being, like I said, fanatic. But it's a habit. That's the bottom line. I don't think it's all just thirst. I think people have just gotten into the habit of grabbing, and it's not water most of the time. It's soda.
Yeah.
It's raspberry lemonade. It's anything except water.
Yeah. Well, if a person can conquer their food discipline demon, so to speak, that is one of the highest disciplines you can have, pretty much in this life. People rely on food for so many different reasons, not just comfort eating and binges, but sometimes, the mechanisms that are excited by eating, especially sugar, MSGs. I won't get into MSGs, but there's something that's put into the food that's excites the taste buds, but it's very detrimental to you. But anyways, what happens is people get caught in looking for comfort out of food. And looking for comfort out of food, that's why it's $1 trillion industry, different things, sugar and, these different things that are detrimental to you. What happens is if you're not able to conquer that, then you're going to rely on that. Now you're going to be within your own reality. When somebody challenges that, now you're going to find yourself in a moment of cognizant dissonance, all right? Psychological term, look it up. In a nutshell, if a person perceives reality in a certain way, when that perception is challenged, they're going to grasp onto anything that supports their own beliefs just so they don't have to change, all right?
Oh, wow.
So now, in terms of bread, I've had people almost get violent with me, and I'm not even talking to them. Why don't you eat bread? Well, this is why I don't eat bread. You're saying I can't eat bread? No, I didn't say you eat whatever you want, man. I'm just saying me personally. Why don't you drink liquid with? I just don't because, I don't. Well, you're saying I have to do that. No, you don't have to, So once again, when that happens, it's important to be understanding and just understand that a person is in that mode of cognizant dissonance.
And you don't want, and for that person, you can't get angry at that other person because they're doing it different from you. Okay, nobody's making you do something different. That's up to you to do your own research. I wanted to say something about digestive enzymes, but in a moment.
Well, okay, so just really quick though, I know we have a finite amount of time.
Yeah, we got like 9 minutes.
Okay, so I want to get to
before you go there on those digestive enzymes. I'll ask you, but I'll answer it at the same time. Yeah. I've done research that said after age 30. That the average person starts making less, even a healthy person, makes less digestive enzymes after age 30, so that somebody by the time they're age 60 are making 50% less. Their body is producing 50% less enzymes than someone who is 30. And so I have recommended a lot of times that people take a digestive enzyme, especially as they get older, to help that. So if you're...
So in terms of that, yes, that is true. With many functions of the body, as we age, the bodily functions tend to decrease. But that's why I want to get to the next point. There are certain things that we can do to reduce the aging process in the body, mitigate how much the function the body's going to lose, and increase the vitality of certain things, testosterone, women estrogen, and so forth, digestive enzymes. The other two things, I'll just say a quick.
Yeah, I'm gonna give
segment,
you the last minute.
A quick segment, okay?
Okay.
We talked about GMO. Look, genetically modified food. If you can avoid GMOs, avoid them. Look it up. See why. All right. There was a study where they tried to feed GMOs, genetically modified grains, to cows, They put one bin full of GMOs, another bin full of natural grains. The cows ate the natural grains. Once the natural grains were done, they refused to eat the GMOs
You
until they
need
were
to
point of
explain what
starvation.
GMO is.
Genetically modified organisms, genetically modified foods. I don't really have time to get into it, but you definitely should look that up. And the final thing that I talked about was dairy. Well, a lot of the dairy, especially if it's not organic, it has something called RBST in it. RBST is a hormone that they give the cows to make them produce milk 24 hours a day. And it's also called RBGH, recombinant growth hormone. And it's very detrimental to the human body. It causes a whole bunch of bad things that I don't have time to get into. But if you can avoid that, avoid it. Just RBST free or RBGH free milk, all right? If you're going to drink milk at all, which is a whole subject in and of itself. Okay, so now there's a couple things you can do to help mitigate this process of aging. We talked last week about ashwagandha. If you're in a state of insomnia, chronic fatigue, or something where you suspect adrenal fatigue may be the culprit, ashwagandha is really great. Now, let's say you're not. Let's say you just want health and vitality. The number one thing I'm going to recommend that I take is chlorella. Chlorella has, it's a complete food. All right, it's 50 to 60% protein depending on how it's cultivated. But chlorella has vitamin B12, antioxidants, iodine, which is very, very important for thyroid activity. I can talk, if I want to, for 30 minutes about iodine and how if you're not getting sufficient iodine, all right, you're probably getting something else that comes from the same family, which could substitute for iodine, which could be chloride, bromide, or what's the third one? Chloride, bromide, or fluoride. And what happens is your body gets these and it mimics iodine,
Right.
but it's not iodine. Iodine is responsible for 90% of the energy in your body, thyroid function. So anyways, chlorella has iodine in it. If you don't want to actually take an iodine supplement, all right, chlorella is really good for that. Moringa root, spirulina. Spirulina, some say that spirulina is the most nutrient, gram for gram, dense food on the planet. It contains all of the essential amino acids. People that are on a plant-based diet, it's one of their staple foods because they get so much, they extract so much protein from it. That and chlorella, in and of itself, I mean, you know, I take them both. Some people take whey protein before their workouts. I just take chlorella and spirulina. I feel great. I take it sometimes before I go to sleep as well, and wake up the next day full of energy. So, sea moss. Sea moss also has pretty much every vitamin and mineral that we need. Some people have heard about the famous Dr. Sebi. That was one of the things that he really promoted, sea moss, along with bladderwrack. These two things were, you know, they have brought people that were suffering from chronic disease, chronic illnesses, back to good health, along with modified lifestyle and so forth. And from there, if you are taking a multivitamin, I recommend a person really look at where those vitamins are sourced. A lot of the B vitamins are sourced from literally at its very basic component, they're petroleum. You know, a lot of your vitamin C that you have in the powder, what happens is some companies, they were grinding up seashells very, very fine. And they got so fine that under a microscope, under that particular magnification, they couldn't see the difference between that and vitamin C. Therefore, they can call it vitamin C, and they would sell it. Now, is that bad? I don't know. But I prefer a more natural approach. And once again, one thing about moringa. Moringa has 7 times more vitamin C than oranges. And has 15 times more potassium than bananas. All right? Vitamin C, given it's the great antioxidant that it is. Potassium, I mean, if you're potassium deficient, you know, you're going to be in a chronic state of fatigue as well. Potassium is a very important for bodily function. Once again, I want to get into detail with all this because we're on a finite amount of time, but I would say look into those 5 things, okay? Chlorella, spirulina, moringa, sea moss, and bladderwrack. You can get them in a powdered form. Chlorella, there's a supplement called Sun Chlorella. It's out of Japan. You can get it from Sprouts. They're just little pills. You pop about 5 of them on a daily basis. If you look at the
You chew those because you brought me some
no,
of those.
you just
swallow.
Just swallow those,
Okay.
and they dissolve.
In the morning, in the evening, when empty stomach, with food or without.
It doesn't really matter.
Okay. Spirulina, with food or without food.
Spirulina, I like to take that pre-workout.
Pre-workout, so
Yes.
in the morning most of the time.
I rotate that and sea moss.
So you don't take them both the same day.
I can sometimes.
But-
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. It just really depends. I try not to be a fanatic in terms of discipline with it, and that's because I don't ever want to burn myself out. I enjoy what I take. I enjoy the lifestyle that I live. I don't really want to go back to a lifestyle I once lived that is of unhealth. So it's really not that difficult. Nobody has to tell me, you got to work out today. You got to eat right. No, I'm by myself, and I'm taking my chlorella. I'm not sneaking, whatever, But that being said, variation. Okay, I took chlorella today. Cool. I'm going to take sea moss tomorrow.
With or without food.
I'm going to take moringa tomorrow.
Sea moss, with or without food.
Sea moss, okay, so if you get the wild crafted sea moss, what's going to happen is you're going to get, it looks like spaghetti, like
Okay.
curly spaghetti. What's going to happen is you're going to wash it off, all right?
Okay.
Then you're going to put it in water. You're going to
Okay.
soak it for anywhere from 7 to 10 hours.
Okay.
All right, what's going to happen is it's going to rehydrate itself, all right?
Okay.
So now it's going to look like noodles that are kind of soft in texture. From there, you're going to take that, you're going to put it in a blender. You're going to blend it. It's going to be good for about 2 weeks. And if you want to mix it with fruit, you can. You can mix it pretty much with whatever you want to mix it on. Excuse me. So that's kind of how how I take sea moss.
That's good.
The chlorella, once again, you take the pills, or you can take powder.
Okay.
There's a great company called Star West Botanicals that sells chlorella. It's important if you take chlorella to take the broken cell wall chlorella. Imagine a walnut. And the actual walnuts are inside, okay? But if you just swallow the walnut, well, you're not going to actually be able to access the walnuts, all right? You have to break the cell or break the wall of the shell before you can actually get to the walnuts. Well, what happens is there's certain companies that have figured out that chlorella is very similar. So they have a process where they'll break the cell wall of the individual chlorella cells, and therefore the nutrients that are inside the cells are now accessible for the body. So it's real simple. It'll list broken cell wall, chlorella, or not. Get the broken cell wall so that the nutrients and minerals and vitamins are readily available
Okay,
for
real
digestion.
quick. Bladder whack. How do we take that and when?
Bladder whack is really good if you want to lose weight.
Really? Okay, let's
Yes.
talk.
Yes, it's really good. Once again, it's one of the staples that Dr.
Okay.
Sebi talked about.
Morning, evening, empty, because we're almost out of time. Morning, evening, empty.
You
with
can take
food.
it at night. You can take it at night before you go to bed.
With or okay, so without food.
Yeah. Now, see, the thing about this, it's important not to get too caught up in when to take it. If you're taking it, you're doing good. That's
okay,
number
that's
one.
number. Okay.
Okay. Now, there are optimal times to take certain things.
Okay.
The very first thing I do in the morning, is on a chlorella day, which are most days, I'm going to take my chlorella and I'm going to take it with some water. I'm going to wait 30 minutes before I take anything else. I don't have to,
That is
but I
best
usually do.
for you. Okay.
Yeah, for me, that's
Okay.
what works.
Okay. Moringa.
Moringa, you can see a lot of this you can take with your food as well. You can take a lot of this with your food. A lot of it's powder. Like the moringa I take, it's a powder form from Star Wars Botanicals. You can sprinkle a little bit on your food, or a little bit of liquid is not bad. So you can take a small amount of liquid, mix it in a liquid, and just stir it up and just, take it like that. Because it's only food.
Okay, they're giving us a sign. Okay, I'm going to ask you one last question because we are out of time. We are past out of time. Now, so I don't think Chris is telling you to go and buy all of this stuff because it will be just like when we used to go to Gosselman's conference or a conference and you go and buy all these tapes and then you don't even listen to half of them. Okay, so, and your budget might not support that. So if somebody can only get 2 of these right now, and then maybe in a couple weeks when they get paid, get 2 more. What's the most 2 important things in your opinion? We're just asking your opinion.
Chlorella and sea moss.
Chlorella
If you
and
have
sea moss.
chronic
Okay.
fatigue and you need to deal with that, then I'm going to say ashwagandha and chlorella.
Okay, and I would say this. I went and got the night stuff and the night restore and what's the day one called?
Nightly Restore and Jumpstart.
Jumpstart. And it took a week, but seriously, today, because I went and got it last Wednesday, I didn't feel it as much, but today it's like I am like on a different plane of energy. So that stuff did work. I'm just interested in the...
So
What?
on that really quick, I'm going to say that's how you see health.
I know.
Don't see health as taking a pill and reaching an optimal state of health. Take health as I'm going to start doing this and I'm going to incrementally get to good health.
Okay, that's good. So thank you, Chris. You know, we could just talk to you so much because we didn't really get to so much of this. There's so many things when it comes down to stress affecting your health. We didn't get to the emotions, and we might do that at another time, really in the near future, because there's some emotions that really affect your health. Because different negative emotions are stressful, bitterness and anger, unforgiveness. Those all create stress in your body, and they are so detrimental to your body. We also didn't get a chance to talk about the connection between the body and your mind being so connected, so that I know sometimes you'll go to the doctor and you have a stomach ache and they're really talking to you about your stomach and what you ate, when they probably might need to be talking to you about stress, what's going on in your body that's doing that. So, okay, so we're going to get Chris back really, really soon, because I just have a lot of questions. And don't run and just break your bank. He's told you two things that you could do the research and get either the chlorella and the spirulina, or the ashwagandha and the chlorella.
Ashwagandha and chlorella, or chlorella and sea moss.
And sea moss.
Spirulina is good.
Okay,
but
now I
sea
got it right.
moss,
Sea
it's
moss.
really good.
I'm going to get I got 2 last week, so I got the 2 last week. Today I'm feeling great. I mean, just in time for my birthday. And so, okay, so thank you for joining us on The Living Room. As I said, we'll let you know. We're going to get Chris back really, really, really soon. I know I'm not going to put him on the spot today. I hope we can get him back so we can finish this segment really, really soon. Okay, so I'll see you, and we'll both see you. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your knowledge. And by the way, you can look at him and see how healthy he is. I mean, he is the picture of health. He's my son, and I'm looking at those big giant arms and his skin, everything. And I'm around him, so I see how disciplined he is. So thank you, and we'll see you next week from The Living Room. Bye.
Hey guys, thank you for watching. Made the best decisions of your life while you were watching the end of that message. You committed your life to Jesus Christ. And if you do, we are excited for you. We want to tell you congratulations. You just made the best decision of your life. That decision changed your destiny, and your whole life from the moment you were born till right now was leading up to that moment. Now we want to help you follow through with that decision to follow Jesus. At the bottom of your screen, you're going to see this website, lovelandchurch.org. If you go to our website, lovelandchurch.org, you'll see a link that says Respond to God. Respond to God. Click on that link. You'll see a form that we want you to fill out, and it'll send us your information. We're not going to give that information to anybody else. All we're going to do with that information is reach out to you so that we can support you and help you follow through with your decision. You might have some questions now that you've given your life to Jesus Christ. What's next? How do I handle this? How do I talk to God? Those are all questions that we had ourselves when we came to Jesus, and we want to help you find the answers. So go to lovelandchurch.org, click on Respond to God, fill out the form, and we're going to get back with you very quickly so we can help you get to know your God better. God bless you.